Yeah,
If
Ben, everything's head on a ladder.
Good evening, everybody. Back to Zoom. The truth is, I think I can hear it's just starting to rain. So it's good that Taka arranged that to come back.
Have you heard of the good?
Oh, didn't catch that. What did you say?
No, I was saying it's a very good job. We've
Yeah. Literally, just started raining in a second.
Good one.
Right. We're going to learn today about weaving. I hope you'll enjoy weaving. And in fact, I was actually impressed at one stage that I was correct that we don't really know what this means. Because the truth of the matter is our weaving process has changed dramatically for what it is. But we'll go through what we can, the most we can. We're up to a new Perek Baruch Hashem on Daf Kuf Hey Amud Aleph, the Mishnah. And again, we're continuing with the halachas of what's considered a melacha. What is considered a real melacha? So the Mishnah says as follows: a person who does 3 threads through a cloth. So here's more than 3, but you can see the idea. Person goes in and out 3 times. That means 3 levels, 3 threads. Or 1 already on a piece of clothing, chayav. And as we explained actually yesterday in that vein, that 3, let's hold like this. When you're starting, it has to be at least 3, because less than 3 is insignificant. But once you've already got a proper piece of clothing and you just add 1 thread, it's already a significant thing. It's a bit like if you've got a whole, if you want to start writing something, write 1 letter, it's meaningless. If you've got a whole book and your letter finishes the book, finishes the Sefer Torah, that's much more important. The Chachamim say, it's always 2 threads, not like Rabbi Lezer that says sometimes 1, sometimes 3. They say it's always 2. Tosis points out that if you remember, we said yesterday with all that background, that if it's the last thread, that means if a person on Shabbos does the last stitch, and by then he finishes the entire suit of clothing, then even the Chachamim agree that a person's chayav. So when the Mishnah says over here, bein betchila, bein besoif, it does not mean literally besoif. It doesn't mean literally the last stitch. But besoif over here it just means it just means besoif over here. Sorry, besoif. Can you hear me? Again, if it's the very, very last stitch of the clothing, then everybody agrees with chayav. So when the Chachamim over here say you need 2, bein betchila, bein besoif, what the meaning is like this: whether it's the first 2 or whether it's in the middle, besoif meaning after you've already done other stitches, then it has to be 2. If a person makes 2 heddles, that's the English word for it, and here there's a picture of it. If you look very carefully, it's a circle within a thread, by which process you put the threads through the circle, and in that way people can then sew. Here's another picture of it. We've had it already quite a bit in Perek Godam, where you're making the thing to hold the thread, which helps it up and down. So the more explain what's mean benirin, or bekirus, the more explains that as well. Benofa is a sieve, bekvor is a very fine sieve, ubesal, a basket, as we mentioned many times, a wicker basket is also weaved, chayav. The person does 2 stitches, that's not weaving, that's stitching. If a person tears in order to sew 2 stitches. So the Gemara says like this. Rabbi Lezer said 3. You have to do 3. That means the beginning of a piece of clothing, to be chayav on Shabbos, you have to do 3. It says like this. Also, Rabbi Yitzchok Toni Stein. Rabbi Yitzchok had a different version, not 3 but 2. We've learned 3, not 2. Contradiction. Is it 2 or 3 weaves? And the Gemara says like this. It depends if it's a thick thread or a thin thread. By a thick thread, it is one case. By a thin thread, it's the other. And now the Gemara brings 2 versions to this answer. That means we have a contradiction. Is it 3 or 2? And we gave the answer thick thread, thin thread. And the Gemara actually brings a logic either way around. The Gemara explains. Some say one way round, some say the other round. Alimi, when it's very thick, if a person weaves with a very, very thick rope, the reality is it easily gets undone. You try and take a very thick rope and make a knot in it, it easily gets undone. A very, very thin thread, if you take a tiny thread and you make a knot in it, it's almost impossible to undo, right? So therefore, when you're doing with a thin thread, with a thick thread, so then unless you've done 3 stitches at the beginning, 3 weaving at the beginning of the clothes, it will get undone. Because thick rope will easily get undone. So unless you've done 3, you've not done anything. But with a thin thread, so then 2 is enough. That means, but trei sasi katini by thin ones, trei namido sasi. Wamidola haigisa katini by thin threads, telso yadi. When you've got 3, people see it, because unless when you've got a very thin thread and you only do 2 weaving, it doesn't do anything. Nobody can see anything. Trei lo yadi. Alimi trei nami yadi. Basically like this. We have a stira. Do you need to do at the beginning of the weaving process 3 or 2? Look over here. Here's a process of somebody who's only done 2. And the more brings us a stira. One place it says 3, one place it says 2. And the more gives an answer that it depends if it's thin thread or thick thread. And the more explains that these 2 things, you can have either version make sense. By a thin thread, it's very negligible, and therefore you have to have 3. Mashake by a very heavy, thick thread, even 2 is significant. That's one way around. Another way to understand it is the other way around. That thick thread is easily undone. So unless you've done 3 times, it will get undone by itself, and therefore you haven't done anything. Mashake by thin thread, it sticks much better. The stitches work better. The weaving stays longer, and therefore even 2 works. It's interesting. You've got the logic both way around as to how much is considered significant. Tanya, we learned. Somebody who weaves 3 at the beginning. Or 1 on a piece of clothing which is already started. Chayav. Who is this going like? Is it going like the Tanakama of our Mishnah or Abeleza of our Mishnah? Should be shouting out to Abeleza of the Mishnah, because the Tanakama of the Chama of our Mishnah said 2. The Abeleza said 3 at the beginning and 1 when it's a continuation. So when he says over here 3 and 1, that's Abeleza. When you're sewing onto the hem, onto the edge of the clothes, you have to do 2 threads, 3 stitches. That means, if you've got a piece of clothing and you decide to embroider the end of the clothing, you want to put, some people on the end of the jacket, they have like a gold plate or something, or the end of your clothes, you want to put something nice around your collar. So then, since you've already got a piece of clothing, all you need to do is 2 threads with 3 stitches, and that's enough. Where do we see that such a small thing makes a difference? Cotton, a small string, a small belt. Oh, says the Gemara, going back, not Be'orig, the Bach changes it. This shitta, that 3 at the beginning, 1 when you already started, is chayav. Stomach Abeleza. This brisa, the stamp brisa, is like Abeleza of our Mishnah. Tadiyadach, another brisa which is not like Abeleza. 2 on a thick piece of clothing. Valo immo, or on the hem, chayav. Abeleza imma afilu echad, even 1 because you already began it. Ubesof on the edge. 2 threads, 3 stitches, that is chayav. So you see over here that the brisa brings shittas tanakama's stam, and then Abeleza argues. He says like this: the one who's so we've got 1 stam brisa like the chomim, 1 stam brisa like Abeleza. And as we've mentioned a few times, the whole nafkimin is whether a person is over Issa Devaisa. Of course, one's not allowed to do Midrabanon. And the whole nafkimin is when the Beis Midrash is standing, is he chayav to bring a korban chatos? When we say chayav over here, we mean chatos. We mean chiyuv chatos. So let's go very briefly what we've learned so far. A person finishing an item of clothing completely, even 1 stitch, is chayav. A person who's not finishing an item of clothing, according to the Chachamim, he always has to do 2 threads. That means it has to do two complete, in weaving, we're talking about two threads that go along. It makes no difference if it's the beginning of the clothes, it makes no difference if it's the end of the clothes, except when you're finishing the clothes, then the Chacham say the machmir. Otherwise, two threads is chayav. That's Chacham. Rabbi Lezer says like this: at the beginning, you need to do 3 or 2, and at the end means once you've already started, 1. What's the 3 or 2 according to Rabbi Lezer? It depends if it's thin thread or thick thread, whether it's 3 or 2, and we have 2 versions as to whether the thick one gets undone easier, so you need to do 3, or whether the thin one is insignificant, so then you need to do 3. Okay. Mishnah goes back to the Mishnah. My benirin. What's the Mishnah say? You make 2 heddles, 2 rings to hold the threads. Benirin. What's benirin mean? Omar Abaya. Shrei tarti bebotin nira b'chota benira. 2 in the hole and 1 out of the hole. That's how Rashi explains. And before we get very busy, what in the world does Rashi mean? 2 in the hole and 1 out of the hole. If you look at this picture very carefully, is what happens is, it's actually got more detailed pictures, but I'm not sure. This picture is basic. What happens is like this. You've got the frames and you've got the circles that hold the threads. What happens is the thread goes inside the circle and then there's a frame which lifts it up and lifts it down. Besides for that, they would also tie it around the frame itself. So therefore you had to have, to be chayav, you had to do 2 threads going into 2 rings, and then afterwards going from the ring into the frame after the ring. And only when you've done that is it considered that you've done enough to be chayav. Bekivus, my bekivus, omarav matzivusa. Matzivusa just means a frame. A frame. Here they show you a picture of a frame by itself. The question is, what do they mean just by a frame? Actually has a nicer picture. Yeah. Not sure how easy it is to see. I'm not sure. That means sometimes when they would weave just by putting the threads through a frame. And then in a case where you would make such a thread, we make such a weaving process, then it would be chayav even without putting it in the rings. The way, there being a small picture over here, which is a bit like how nettings look. Netting, you don't have this very, very close intertwined. Because what happens is nettings, you want to have, let's say you want to make a net curtains or you want to make fishing nets. So what happens is the way you weave it is you don't have these circles which grasp hold of every thread. What happens is you just have big frames. The threads go up and down on the frame without it going through individual rings. So that's what the Mishnah means when it says bekivus. Rashi, okay. The Gemara carries on. Ba'atufah shtei tefillos, if you do 2 stitches, but he said it in the previous pair, 2 stitches. Since we want to continue that if you tear 2 stitches, you're chayav, so therefore we mention sewing 2 stitches. The Gemara so it says, well, it says again, like, since Mishum Kibon Mr. Sefer, come not for base 5, don't name Atufa. Back where? That also says there, because the Mishnah there says, if you do 2 stitches, you're chayav, and if you tear 2 stitches. Ela Mishum Kibon Mr. Sefer, the next Mishnah is going to tell us. If somebody tears clothes because he's angry, or for a dead person, then he's chayav. That means the whole chiddush of our Mishnah is not adding anything in the halachas, because everything it says in the last part of the Mishnah has already been said. But many times the Mishnah introduces an halacha because of the continuation. A person tears in order to sew 2 stitches. How can you find that? Well, up to Taf Kuf Hey on the base, top of the page. The Ovdok kissed the top. If a person does it with a wrinkle, and this is a nice picture over here. If you look very carefully over here, somebody sewed a piece of clothing, and by mistake, there's a piece of clothing coming out, and it's been sewn down with an extra wrinkle coming onto the clothes. The only way to fix that is you have to tear the clothes and re-sew it straight like that. So then over here it's a case where you've sewn it and you have to tear 2 stitches in order to re-sew the 2 stitches. That means if a person's sewing and by mistake he has caught some of the fabric together and now the fabric is coming out and it looks like it's bubbled out, therefore what you have to do is you have to tear it, re-sew it, and that's what the Mishnah says, that if you tear 2 stitches in order to re-sew them, then they chayav. Up to the next Mishnah. A person who tears because he's angry. A person was nifta. And everybody was mekalkel p'tur. Well, later weeks machlekes, as I said. Okay, everybody is mekalkel p'tur. If a person ruins something in order to fix it afterwards, Shiur mesakin, the shear is the same as if he would be fixing it. Shear, that means whatever it would be to fix, that's how much he would have to do to break. Sham laban, somebody who washes clothes. Ramanapis, that is somebody who combs out. Vatzivea dyes. Vatzivea and spins. Rochav kofar. Rochav is the distance between the 2 fingers after the thumb. If you look from here to here, when your finger is stretched out completely, that is the distance of Rochav Asit. The Mishnah says Rochav Asit kofar. Kofar means double what the distance from here to here is called Mloi Rochav Asit kofar, which is the same distance as the tip of your thumb to the tip of that finger. So it's either double this or single this. That means if you take a piece of thread and you spin it or you dye it in order to make it a nice color, how long does the thread need to be? Approximately 10 centimeters. That is enough, that's considered significant. That has to be how far in the clothes. When we talk about weaving 2 threads, how far does the thread need to go? The distance of 1 sit, which is only the distance between the 2 fingers, middle and index finger. So the Mishnah tells us that somebody who tears out of anger, then he's potter. So somebody who tears something because he's angry, the Mephoshah say you should read it for every al-meisoi, for mourning on his dead person, chayav. It's an interesting halacha. If a person does kriya on Shabbos, he's been over an issa d'oraisa on Shabbos. Nevertheless, he does not need to do kriya again. Many times a person has to do kriya. If there's kriya on Shabbos, he shouldn't have done it. But it works. There's a more and more, because a famous machlekes and bar b'rova, Yovid mahani, Yovid loy mahani, which is a machlekes. If a person goes against the Torah, I just open the window, sorry. Yovid mahani, Yovid loy mahani. That if a person does something which the Torah told him not to, does it have any effect? Has he got it? Does it make it to or not? We surely more ask the kasha from this Gemara. If a person does kriya on Shabbos, how can the kriya be a good kriya? In the end of the day, the halach is you're not allowed to do kriya on Shabbos. And Rechel Masman says an interesting svor, that there's a difference between something which needs to be done, an outcome, or a chalois. Meaning, that if let's say a person is mekadesh and isha in a way that is not royal, so therefore what happens is he gives the ring to her and says, Ad b'kodeshes li, but the Maisa was in a way that the Torah forbids. So what happens is, the ring is in her hand, but the kedushin is not cham. But when it's a question of has the action been done, then we say it has been done, because it's not a question of mahani. Mahani means did they have help? Did they do anything? Here, the midst of the Torah is that the clothes should be torn. They are torn, so therefore you're okay. Okay. So the word says like this: we've got a stira. The Mishnah says that if you do kriya, one is potter. And this Brisa says if you do kriya, one is chayav. Answers the kasha. No kasha. Haba mace the day, haba mace the alma. When it is his own mace and he's got a chiyuv to do kriya, so the kriya is of tri'eles, so then he's chayav. When he stam does kriya, when he doesn't need to do kriya, so the kriya is useless. So therefore, is potter. So our Mishnah is talking about somebody who's not his relative. The Mishnah says his dead person. What says we're not talking about one of the 7 relatives. We're talking about somebody who's more distant than 7 relatives. So it's his dead person, but it's not somebody that he has to do kriya. Let's get it clear. On Shabbos, one is not chayav unless one does something which is actually a help for something. That means if you do something which is destructive, which has no to'eles, one is not chayav on Shabbos. That is the halacha of Shabbos. You have to do something which gives benefit, which has a to'eles, which is useful. So there's a machshayla when a person does kriya on Shabbos, is he chayav or potter? So the Gemara says very simple. The Talmud says, if he's doing kriya on somebody that he has to do kriya, like a father, brother, sister, son or daughter, so then that kriya was of value. Since it was of value, so therefore he's chayav. If he does kriya for somebody that he doesn't need to do kriya for, so therefore there was no value, it was an act of destruction, so therefore he's potter. Now what the Gemara does is, the Gemara goes through a list of circumstances where a person is mechuyev to do kriya, even if it's not one of the close 7 relatives. There are cases that a person has to do kriya, even if it's not one of his close 7 relatives. And in all those cases, the kriya is something, the tearing is something of value. If it's something of value, so what would the din be if you did it on Shabbos? It would be chayav. So when our Mishnah says you're potter, we're obviously not talking about a case where the kriya was of value. So the Gemara goes through a few cases. So the Gemara like this: if the person that was nifted that he's doing kriya for is a Talmud Chacham, then even if it's not a relative, the Tanya Chacham Shemes, Hakol Kroiv of everybody is related. Hakol Kroiv of Sagadat, because everybody related, that can't be true, not everybody's related. And then Hakol Kroiv of everybody has to do kriya for him. Hakol Kroiv Olav, everybody has to do kriya for him as if they're relative. Hakol Chotzin Olav. In the olden days, when somebody would die, they would tear off the shoulders of the clothes and they would make the shoulders bare, right? The shoulders would become undressed. They would tear off the cloak off the shoulders. The shoulders is a sign of responsibility, you shoulder responsibility. When a great person is nifter, we feel that he was responsible for the world. So that responsibility has been laid bare. Okay. So if a Talmud Chacham is nifter, a person should tear off the shoulders. Akol mavin olav v'rochvo. There's a sudas havor, the first meal a person has after the kvor. When the Talmud Chacham is nifter, everybody should join in this meal. So our Mishnah, which says that if you do kriya, you're potter, but if it's a Talmud Chacham, then you have to do kriya. So there was a to'eles. Our Mishnah is talking about the person who died who wasn't a Talmud Chacham. Why do young little children die? In order they should cry for a kosher person. Does Hakadosh stop punishing somebody and taking a mashkan that later on in life, that means Hakadosh makes a young child die, that later on in life somebody should cry for Adam Kosher? That can't be. That if a person does cry for Adam Kosher, Hashem forgives all his averes. And if he doesn't, then what happens is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes that he loses his children. So we see that being mourning over somebody who's an Adam Kosher is very, very important. So our Mishnah, which says that I do kriya on Shabbos, is not important.
Can we not just say he's not an Adam Kosher?
Oh, very good. You mecham the Gemara. Adam Kosher. He wasn't an Adam Kosher. That means again, what the Gemara is trying to do is force the Mishnah into a tighter and tighter oikimta. We're talking about somebody who's not a close relative because then the kriya is useful. We're talking about somebody who's not a Talmud Chacham, and we're talking about somebody who's not an Adam Kosher. Because in any of these cases, the kriya would be a kriya of value, and one would be chayav on Shabbos. Says the Bobi, the kriya b'shas tzias neshama. If the person's standing there when the person's nifter, chiyuv mechayav, then you have to do kriya. The Tanya, Mishum Rozo Imo Imo David Meis b'shas tzias neshama chayav likra. Olemazah dim nesefer Torah shenisraf. If a person has sees a sefer Torah being burned, you have to do kriya. Same thing if a person sees something being nifter. So therefore, it comes out that person would be chayav. So that's 4 kimtas. It's not a relative. It's not a Talmud Chacham. It's not an Adam Kosher. A person wasn't there at the time when the person was nifter. So therefore, a person did not need to do kriya, and therefore the kriya was useless. So therefore, you're not chayav. Because a kriya, which has no use, is potter, because it's destructive. That's why many times, if you open a can or something in a destructive manner, you don't have to worry. If you open a carton or everything in a destructive manner, you're not potter. Because anything which is destructive is not also the issa is only if you're doing something which is not destructive. Let's say you open a packet of crisps and you use the packet of crisps afterwards to eat from it slowly. So then you're not doing a destructive act. You're doing an act which is useful. You're creating yourself a little bag from which you can eat from. But if you open it down the middle, where now you can't possibly eat from it, so then that's destructive. So what's it like this? Tinoch Meisei. So you've answered the stira and the vice of the Mishnah to two dead people. But what about kasha? What about anger? What about anger? That means what about two people that are stira? In our Mishnah it says if a person tears because he's angry, then he's potter. And in the Bryce it says, Kasha, Horab Yehuda, Horab Shimon. Horab Yehuda, Domoloch, Shetzich, Lukufa, Chav, Ale. Horab Shimon, Domoloch, Shetzich, Lukufa, Potter, Ale. That means, when does the Mishnah say that your Chayav is referring, so the Mishnah says your Potter is of Shimon. Why? What is the purpose when you get angry to destroy a cup or something? What's the tiyas? What do you gain from it? The answer is, there's no direct gain by smashing cups when you're angry.
Letting out stress.
Oh, you're letting out stress. So it's a malacha shein tzricha legufa. It's a pleasure which is not the direct pleasure of the malacha you're doing. It's like pulling a table. And by the way, there's furrows in the ground. I'll never forget, I don't know if I should say this in the shiur. It's such an impression on me. A friend of mine once left his shiva in the middle of his man. Wasn't doing so well. So I decided with a couple of friends, we took a taxi with him to the station. And it was the day after, and I don't remember the history that well, I think it was England and France played. And one of the players fouled somebody. Again, I didn't know about the game altogether at the time. And they gave him a card, which meant that he was off the thing, and he had 10 players, not 11. Anyway, I said England lost. The taxi driver told us, I'll never forget this. This is already more than, I was about 17 at the time. It was about more than 20 years ago, that when the person fouled, he put his foot through the television. And for the rest of the evening, he had to watch it. He had to listen to it on the radio. And the next morning, the first thing he did was, he called up the local television company to ask them if there's something. And they said to him that we've had hundreds of phone calls today. All the people smashed. So you can look it up in history books. I was 18, so 22 years ago, something like that. It must have been a very, very important game in which somebody did something and caused such anguish. You probably weren't, I don't know how many of you were even following football at the time.
David Beckham.
Okay, could have been, I don't remember. Anyway, it's amazing. So what pleasure was there? Is any pleasure? No. The pleasure is indirect. It's a murder limud in anger. Murder limud in anger. Anyway, it says, according to Rabbi, the melacha she'etzich legufa yechayev. According to Rabbi, the melacha she'etzich legufa yepotam. So that's the machlekes regarding anger. Rashi points out that once we've said this, in fact, we could have answered the other steer, Meisei and Meisei, with the same logic. Says the Gemara, if a person is just ruining things, even Rabbi Yehuda doesn't say Yechayev. Rabbi Yehuda only says Yechayev if there's a Toyeles. Even if the benefit is indirect, Rabbi Yehuda says Yechayev. But over here, there's no benefit at all. So the Gemara says, no. This is also a benefit. It calms himself down. Calming himself down is also a benefit. It's not the benefit, it's not a direct benefit, but it's enough that a person should be chai. Is a person allowed to break things when he's angry? Somebody tears clothes when he's angry. The person who breaks things when he's angry. Somebody who scatters money because he's angry. You should look at him and consider him like somebody who serves Avodah Zarah. Why? That's how the skill of the Yetzer Hara is. Today it says, do this. Do something slightly worse. Now what happens is, once a person allows the Yetzer Hara control, even if it's for something insignificant, like just smashing a glass out of anger, eventually that person has no control of himself. and he'll end up doing the worst of
Okay, but he still hasn't yet served the avodah zarah. The fact is, he might be on a track to do so. He hasn't done.
That means you should
How can
consider
we
that
look at
Avera so bad that you should see like a person planting an apple tree. In the mind's eye, he sees beautiful apples growing. There's no apples growing. At the moment, all there's a piece of earth and a tiny seed. In his mind's eye, he sees it. And the person
You
sees
can't
that.
sell that tree, let's say, for the price of a tree full of apples. Because it's not
Okay,
yet.
but that means we were saying this is how bad anger is, that you should see it with the same severity, because eventually that's the potential of what it's going to be. It says, well, in micro, where do you sit in the pasuk? In you. You shouldn't put a god, a foreign god, inside you. Now, how do you put avodah zarah inside you? Which foreign god is there inside? A god, the etzem. What's a god? A god is a power which a person needs to serve. A person can put inside himself a Yetzirah, meaning that he puts inside himself a power which he's under the control. And that is, and how does the pasuk finish off? So don't put inside you an Elzor. Don't put inside you an Elzor, a foreign power, and then because if you do, you'll end up bowing down to Avodah Zarah. That's what the pasuk is teaching us. So the Maisa we see that a person is not allowed to break things to calm himself down. If a person is not allowed to break himself, so therefore the Mishnah shouldn't be talking about Tavosha. He wants to make the family scared. And that is permitted. To display anger just for the sake of the family being scared, that's permitted. The more gives examples of Amorim, what they used to do to make the family and children behave themselves. Rabbi Yehuda Sholif Matzvaisa. Rabbi Yehuda would pull out the threads of his hem. At the bottom of every jacket, there's a hem, right? He used to pull out the threads of the hem in anger, and that would shock the family. He would break broken things. Both of these people would do things which didn't actually cause real damage. Nobody notices if there's thread coming out of the hem, and nobody, if you break something which is already broken, you're not actually cause damage. But what you're doing is showing the people how unhappy you are. Rav Sheshas, this I looked up, I did not find the pshat. Vomila lam say he would pour over his maidservant munine avesha, fish juice over her head. Can you imagine? If he was displeased, he would pour fish juice over her head. Again, the idea being that fish juice is not something that you've got much use for. So in order to show his displeasure, that's what he used to do. Abba broke lids. Lids as well are not that useful. It's interesting, if you ever read that, there's an amazing book called All for the Boss, and she describes that on a rare occasion when they dared be naughty, the father would put them in a bed and take his belt and whip the bed, whip the legs of the bed. And they would all be terrified and would all like say, promise never to misbehave. And the mother would stand there and say that, Daddy, stop shouting at them. They're going to be good, etc. It's an interesting way of chinuch is to display the anger, but not to do it on the person to cause harm for the person. There's actually a Rashi that who does that to us. What he does is he wants to get us scared. He doesn't want us to be harmed. So what he does is he punishes the goyim, and in that way we get scared. And it's a very interesting lesson. If you ever hear of a terrible tragedy or a plane crash, even if there's no yidam, it's like a Kadosh Baruch Hu breaking broken vessels or hitting the bed in order that we should be improved. So God says it's okay. So again, let's go briefly what we had so far. Our Mishnah says if a person tears for a dead person or for a anger, he's potter. The Bryce says he's chayv. What's the difference? The Gemara gives two different malachim. The first malach is our Mishnah is talking about when you're doing it for no reason, not a relative, not a Talmud Chacham. You weren't there with Tira, etc. Then the Gemara says a different malach is our Mishnah is going to be Shittas of Shimon, and the Bryce is going to be Shittas of Yehuda. As we've said before, we pass like Shimon Melacha Shetzich go for potter. And Rabbi Yehuda Nasi in most of the Mishnayos and Shabbos always seems to go like Shimon. And Melacha Shetzich go for potter. But Rabbi Yehuda, he holds Melacha Shetzich go for Chayav. And therefore, when a person breaks something to show anger, because not too bad ways wants to release anger, because that's something which is forbidden. When a person breaks something in order to display anger, says a Melacha Shetzich go. He's not gaining from the actual Melacha, but he's gaining from the side point from Melacha, and therefore that's Melacha Shetzich. Okay. Now the Gemara carries on a little bit about the importance of hespedim. The reason is because the Mishnah discussed doing kriya, and we had the whole sugi before when the kriya is correct or not. It's not to do with Hilchos Shabbos. The Gemara says like this: anybody who sheds tears for a kosher person, after Baruch Hu safe and Hashem counts them. He puts them in the storehouse. The word noidi, Rashi explains interestingly, Loshen Lonu Deloy. Rashi brings a pasuk in Eov that when Eov suffered a tragedy, his friends came and they spent 7 days saying nothing, just being sympathetic with him. Can you imagine having a meeting for 7 days where nobody speaks a word, just gives you an idea of how great they were. They could think for 7 days without talking. Anyway, and Lonu Deloy means to sympathize with him. So noidi, my sympathy, so far to you have counted ato. Simo dimosi benoidecho, put my tears in your jug, in your books. So when a person cries for an Adam kosher, the Baruch Hu counts the tears. Anybody who's lazy with the hesped, we should bury the life. Shnema. North to Har Goash. The Medrash explains the word Har Goash does not come up anywhere else in Nach. And also furthermore, it says that there's no point in knowing where Yeshua was buried. Why do we need to know? So the Gemara dashes Har Goash doesn't mean the name of a place, but rather the mountain Goash was stirred to bury them. That means the mountain wanted to topple over and bury Klal Yisrael because of the fact that they did not do a hesped for Yeshua. If you look, it's a very, very small Tosfos at the bottom of the page. A Tosfos says that you don't see anywhere that they did a hesped for Yeshua like they did for Moshe and Aaron. So therefore, because they didn't do a hesped for Yeshua, that's why they deserve to be buried alive. He will not live a long time. Midah k'neged midah. Shenema b'sa'asor. B'sa'asor means with its measure. Meaning that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does midah k'neged midah, measure for measure. B'sa'asor, with its measure, b'shalcho, when you send it away, teriveno, you will punish it. And it's a midah k'neged midah. That a person who's not upset that a Talmid Chacham lost his life, that his life was shortened, so then his life gets shortened. The pasuk says that the people lived after Yeshua for long days, which seems like a long life. And yet you just said before they never gave him a proper hesped. And you just said that you get a short life. And here it says Ashevichu Yomim had a long life. And it says, you came from Babel, do you not understand? They had a long days, but not many years. Long days doesn't make a person live a long time. They had a lot of days, but not many years. So he said to him, which we say in the Shema, that you should live many days. Does that mean only a short life? So it's more, when it's a bracha, when we're trying to bless somebody, then of course we say that many days means a long life. But there it's not trying to bless something. There it's just trying to say what happened to Yeshua. And therefore what happened to Yeshua is that it says that Sherichu Yomim, they had many days after Yeshua, but not many years. And that was a punishment for the fact that they did not give a good hesped for Yeshua. One of the brothers Chasson dies. All the brothers should be worried that maybe they will die. If one of a group dies, that the oldest died. And that is a big pachat, because if the greatest one dies, so we can see that Midas Hadin is so strong that even the greatest one died. And some say that the youngest died, and that is that whenever punishment starts, HaKadosh Baruch Hu always starts punishment from the weakest. So therefore, either when the youngest dies, that's a pachat, because you see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu starting the punishment, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu always starts punishments because kolo, with bad things, and you always start from the youngest. Or it's the greatest dies, and that shows that Midas Hadin is so powerful that it is that the Gadol was nifta. I don't know how many times I've heard a hesped starting off. It's a good way to start off a hesped. If you want chasur, if ever have to give a hesped, you start off with this Gemara. If somebody from a group dies, everybody in the group should die. And Rashi explains they should die, but maybe they should die. That this is something which is, this is the betzim, the pachad that person has to have. The biggest, when a person sees Misa, reminds him that life is not forever and we have to do something with it. Okay. Go back to our Mishnah. Anybody who does something which is destructive is potter. All those who do something destructive is potter. So far, so good. It's exactly like our Mishnah. Except for two of the obvious malachos. Somebody who wounds, and somebody who sheds blood, or mavi, and somebody who makes a fire. Now that's not in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says, all those who do destructive are potter. Omale, puk toni libo, go and teach it outside, meaning what you're saying is not true. It's not a Mishnah, meaning it can't be true. The proof being our Mishnah. In our Mishnah it says that we call it in a potter. And if you say it is a Mishnah, that we're talking about when a person needs to feed his dog and he wants to give him blood to eat. So a person, let's say, cuts his cow, sheds blood, and then feeds his dog. Sometimes a person needs ashes to cover dirt. So what you do is you take a piece of paper, you burn it, or a piece of wood, you burn it, it makes ashes, and use the ashes to cover some dirt. All those who do destructive of potter. And here, Rashi is a very interesting cheshbon, which the Rishonim will like, which they will bring down. And that is like this. We'll go slowly. Our Mishnah says, anybody who does something destructive is potter. Anybody who does something destructive is potter. Doesn't matter what it is. Comes along the Brisa, which the Gemara is doubtful about, and the Gemara says, if the Brisa exists, the Brisa says that if you wound or burn something, then one is chayav. Even if it's destructive. Says the Gemara, how can we reconcile? That is how Rabbi Yehuda Rab Shimon. Says Rashi, a very interesting cheshbon. Rab Shimon, we said before, holds Malacha she'ein tzricha legufa is potter. Malacha she'ein tzricha legufa is potter. And malacha where there's no actual benefit in the actual malacha, you're potter. Now, one of the malachas, let's talk about mavi. One of the malachas on Shabbos is to make a fire. The standard case to make a fire is you want to heat up, you want to have a cup of tea, coffee. So what you do is you take some wood, you light a fire, and you cook water on the fire. The truth of the matter is, it's a malacha she'ein tzricha legufa. Why? Because, the actual burning of the wood is destructive, and that's mekalka. So you can say to me, that is destructive, the burning of the wood. The heating up of the water, that is a benefit. But the problem is, according to Rabbi Shimon, we always look at the malacha that you are doing and not at the next stage. Let's say, for example, because you must remember there's two issues, there's bishul and mavi. Mavi is burning and bishul is the cooking. When you're actually burning, the actual burning is destructive. So the only benefit that can be is that there's a side benefit that now you can heat up water. According to Rabbi Yehuda, that says malacha she'ein tzricha legufa is chayav. So the heating up the water, that's a malacha she'ein tzricha legufa. That's why you're chayav, even though that's not the main purpose of the malacha. But according to Rabbi Shimon, the malacha she'ein tzricha legufa is potter. So why are you chayav by cooking? The answer is for burning of the wood, not for the heating up of the water. But the burning of the wood is destructive. Is a raya that Rabbi Shimon holds that mekalkel by burning is chayav. I say this again because it's very, very serious. The Gemara brings a stira regarding mekalkel by chabur and mekalkel by mavir, whether it is chayav or potter. A contradiction between our Mishnah and the Brisa. And the Gemara says it's not a contradiction. One's Rabbi Yehuda, one's Rabbi Shimon. The problem is that we know Rabbi Yehuda and Shimon argue about malacha she'ein tzricha legufa, but we've never seen Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon ever arguing about mekalkel. Since they never argued about mekalkel, how can you reconcile? We know they argue about malacha she'ein tzricha legufa. Fine, that's a nice machlokas. But they never argued about mekalkel. Here it's a stira in mekalkel. In our Mishnah it says mekalkel is potter, and the Brisa says that mekalkel by chabur or mekalkel by habor is potter, is chayav. So it's a contradiction. So where do you see Rabbi Yehuda and Shimon argue? And Rashi explains that the machlokas of malacha she'ein tzricha legufa forces Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon to argue about a completely different machlokas, whether mekalkel is chayav or potter, because one machlokas produces the next machlokas. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the malacha shein tzricha legufa is chayav. You can hold that mekalka, destructive, is always potter. Every act of destruction is always potter. Every act of destruction. Oh, what are you going to say? Why chayav by burning? Simple. The reason you chayav by burning wood is because you're creating heat. The reason why you're chayav by cutting an animal is because you need the blood to feed your dog. So therefore, even though mekalkel is potter, that's not mekalkel. That's mesaken, because you're gaining for the dog, you're gaining for the heat. But according to Rabbi Shimon, he can't answer that. He can't say that the reason why you're chayav by chiyuv and navi is because there's a benefit, a side benefit. What's the benefit? Now my dog won't go hungry, will eat the blood. Or now I won't be cold, I'll have the heat. Because that is a side benefit, and that's malacha shesicha legufa. The Rabbi Shimon malacha shesicha legufa is potter. So the only reason you can be chayav is for the intrinsic act that you're doing. The intrinsic act that you're doing is actually an act of destruction. Is a right that Rabbi Shimon holds that the act of destruction is chayav. That means, very, very briefly, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon argue clearly about malacha shein tzricha legufa when they chayav a potter. But since every chiyuv l'mavi is an act of destruction, so therefore you've got to say the chayav. You can't say chiyuv l'mavi is potter. Why not? Oh, somebody asked me actually this morning. Why can't you say every chiyuv l'mavi is potter? The answer is because we know the 39 obvious malachas. And the two of the obvious malachas are chiyuv l'mavi, burning and wounding. So you've got to be chayav for something by wounding and burning. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, you're chayav for the side benefit, for the heat of feeding the dog. But according to Rabbi Shimon, you can't be chayav for that, because that's malacha shein tzricha legufa. So the only reason you're chayav is for the actual act. The actual act is destructive. Is the right Rabbi Shimon holds that destructive act is chayav. Says, well, my tamid Rabbi Shimon. Where does Rabbi Shimon know that a destructive act is chayav? Says more like this. Later we're going to have a special drasha that you're allowed to do bris milah on Shabbos. That means like this. The Torah tells us you're allowed to do bris milah on Shabbos. Special pasuk. If not for the pasuk, you will not be allowed to. But why not? It's an act of destruction. There's a special drasha that we don't kill the daughter of a kohen on Shabbos. I mean, the daughter of a kohen, if she does nus and pashas emoy, what does she get? She gets sreifa. Does anybody know how we do sreifa? What do we do for sreifa? We heat up lead till it's melted, and we pour melted lead down her throat.
Pour it down throat.
Yeah, we pour melted lead down the throat. And the Torah says you're allowed to do it on Shabbos. Sorry, the Torah says you're not allowed to do it on Shabbos. Shemami no mavi ba'amal chayav. The fact that Torah used to tell you can't do it is a right that you're not allowed to burn on Shabbos. So it's a right that even though both acts are destructive, the smila is destructive, and so is the act of burning lead, because there's no intrinsic act of benefit in it. So if it's chayav, it's a right of Shimon that these things are chayav. Rabbi Yehuda Hosam is sakin, who those cases are sakin to Avashi, Male sakin Mila, Male sakin Keli. Just like sometimes you want to fix a Keli, you want to add a handle to it, you want to add a base to it. This Mila is a tikkun, because the person becomes a sholim in the eyes of Hashem. Just like you want to heat up dye in order to be able to paint with it, you're heating up the lead in order to be able to use it on the daughter of the Kohen. So therefore it's a tikkun. So therefore he's got no raya that kilkul is chayav. So therefore it's interesting. Normally Rabbi Shimon's always meikol. Dovash in this kavan, Rabbi Yehuda says potter, Rabbi Yehuda says chayav, Shimon says potter. Malacha shein tzricha legufa, Rabbi Yehuda says chayav, Shimon says potter. But by one thing, Rabbi Shimon says chayav, Rabbi Yehuda says potter. What's that? Mekalkel. Why? Because otherwise by chum lamav you won't be chayav anything at all. So the Gemara says like this: Shiur malav nechulu. Rabbi Yosef machvi kofol, Rabbi Chia b'ami machvi poshut. Very, very brief. Let's say it ourselves. We said in our Mishnah the amount of thread you have to be chayav to spin or to dye has to be double the distance from these two fingers. This is called Meloi Hesed. There's another way to show it. Is not once times this or twice times this. The Gemara brings two Amoraim when they would demonstrate the size of thread that you would need to be chayav. One of them would say double this, another one would say a single this. It's actually exactly the same measure, but it's just two different ways to demonstrate it. Can you see he is showing it with the once of the thumb to the index finger, and the other person would show double the index finger to the middle finger. Again, Rabbi Yosef machvi kofol, he would show double the two fingers. Rabbi Chia b'ami machvi poshut, spread out, but not spread out the two fingers in the middle, but spread out the thumb to the index finger. It says next Mishnah, if you hunt a bird and you get it into a closet, with tzvi lebayis or a deer into a house chayav. The basic gist of the halachas now is like this: you're chayav once the animal is hunted. If you take a wasp and move it into a dining room, the wasp is not hunted, because even after it's in your dining room, you still need to work very hard to catch it. And that is why, if you ever do need to trap a wasp, the best way to do it is to take a very, very big pot, and catch it in the pot and throw it and cover it and throw it outside. Why? Because even when it's in a very big pot, it could very well be that it's not considered hunted. So it's only considered hunted when it's in a tight corner. How tight does it have to be? So a bird has to be in a cupboard. If you get what? If you get a bird into a house, that's not called hunted. But a deer, which is much bigger, once it's in a house, you're chayav. The Chachamim say tzipur lemigdal. We agree with you about a bird into a cupboard. That means they don't argue about that at all. But top of the bottom base, but tzvi, but a deer, were more machne. You said you're only chayav if it goes into a house. I say not just in the house. Legina, a garden, a chutzah, a courtyard, a bivin, an enclosure chayav. That means Rabbi Yehuda said you're only chayav if you trap a deer in a room. The Chachamim say even in a field, if you take a deer, get it into a field, you're chayav. Not all enclosures are the same. If it's still lacking hunting, meaning after you get it in there, it still needs hunting potter. And that is the basic halacha really of the Mishnah. The Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim really arguing technicalities. What's considered hunted? It says the more like this. Tanan Hossa. The Mishnah Beta tells us, and this is important halacha, a bird or fish or any animal which is not being hunted is muktzah, because you're not allowed to hunt on Yom Tov. Does anybody know why not? Again, you're allowed to on Yom Tov prepare food. You're allowed to cook food. You're allowed to carry your food. You're allowed to do anything on Yom Tov to prepare your food. So are you allowed to go on Yom Tov morning to Wharton Park Lake and catch salmon? Mutter also, or Heaton Park Lake, assuming there's any salmon in either of these lakes. Would you be allowed to? The answer is no, you're not allowed. Why? Because the whole heter is only something which is improved by doing it on Yom Tov. If you cook Yom Tov cook fish 2 days before Yom Tov, by the time it comes to Yom Tov, the fish is not as tasty. So therefore, you're allowed to cook on Yom Tov. But hunting, you don't need to hunt on Yom Tov. Hunt Erev Yom Tov, get the fish into a bucket, leave the fish inside the bucket in your kitchen, and then on Yom Tov, cook it. Since you could have hunted it before Yom Tov, and it doesn't diminish the quality of what you've got by doing it before Yom Tov, therefore, you have to do it before Yom Tov. Anything that can be done before Yom Tov has to be before Yom Tov. For example, preparing the shechita knife. You're not allowed to prepare a shechita knife on Yom Tov. Why? Because you can shechting on Yom Tov means you get fresh meat on Yom Tov. That you're allowed to do. But you're not allowed to prepare the shechita knife. Do that before Yom Tov. So the Mishnah says you're not allowed to hunt on Yom Tov. Since you're not allowed to hunt on Yom Tov, as we said, it doesn't diminish the quality of the food. So therefore, all animals are muktzah. Because since you're not allowed to hunt, you're not allowed to get them. Anything which is muktzah, you're not allowed to feed. You're not allowed to feed wild birds on Shabbos. You're not allowed to scatter. You know, on Shabbos Shiur, some people have a minute to throw breadcrumbs for the birds. You have to be careful not to do that on Shabbos. You can only do it on Friday. Nothing to do with carrying or anything like that. You're not allowed to do it on Shabbos, even if you've got a eruv and everything else. You're not allowed to throw breadcrumbs for the birds, because all birds are muktzah, because you haven't hunted them. So for the muktzah, if the birds are in your cage and you've got a little cage, you're allowed to. If they're free, you're not allowed. Again, so it's not awesome. You're not allowed to hunt, you're not allowed to trap fish from an enclosure on Yom Tov. It's not allowed to give them food. But you're allowed to do animals and birds, and you're allowed to feed them. And the Gemara explains that we're just talking about animals and birds that are already trapped. I mean, it's not allowed to go and hunt a deer on Shabbos. But a deer which is already inside an enclosure and it's already trapped, so you're allowed to go on Yom Tov and take it out of its trap. That means we have a contradiction. One brisa tells us, one place we are told that you're not allowed to hunt animals, chayos, and birds. And one place it's told you are allowed to, it's a stira. And the gist of the answer is going to be very, very, very straightforward. If you don't have the yesod that's volume, afterwards the details can get confusing. If the animal is already basically hunted, for example, if I've got a deer in this room, so mina din is already hunted. So on Yom Tov, I'm allowed to do the extra bit of trapping and take it and shecht it. Or if I've got a bird in a cupboard, I can take the bird and shecht it because it's already trapped, so it's already prepared. If my deer is roaming free in a massive 10-acre garden or 20-acre garden, and then I want to take it to Yom Tov, that's forbidden. That is the main point of here. Anything which has been completely trapped before Yom Tov came in, then you're allowed to then do whatever you want on Yom Tov. And when we say you're allowed to hunt it, what we just mean is you're allowed to then take it from its place where it's been hunted and trap it further and shecht it to whatever you want to do with it. Anything which hasn't been hunted on Yom Tov, before Yom Tov, you're not allowed to hunt it. We'll do the Gemara tomorrow. We're up to Bishleim. I know I've stopped in the middle of a question. The whole Gemara continues with this basic line, and if it doesn't matter to stop in the middle. Let's just get a question. I don't want people not to sleep tonight. Get the question clear. That way, once it's clear, a person can relax. There's a stira if you're allowed to hunt birds and animals on Yom Tov. And the Gemara's answer is going to be basically, if it's already been hunted and it's completely entrapped, and it's just a matter of getting a bit more trapped, that is permitted. If it's completely loose and free, and you're on Yom Tov going to trap it, that's forbidden. So, for example, if you've got a domesticated Shiur, what do you have? What do you have? Chickens, right? There's no problem. Your chickens are domesticated, aren't they? Or rabbit. You've got a rabbit in a clutch. You're allowed to pick it up. Or by picking it up, you're making it trapped. The answer is when it was already in the clutch, it's already trapped. So if it's no worse than what it was before. If you've got a rabbit running around free in a big garden and you take it on Yom Tov, that will be forbidden. So we'll discuss it more tomorrow. And in Yisrael Hashem, tomorrow we're going to have a very big siyum on finishing this very, very, very long period. I don't know where it will be, whether it will be on Zoom or live. We'll have to see. And shkoyach for everybody. I appreciate that.
We let our chickens out on Shabbos. We're allowed to. If we don't lock the cage properly, Rob said, because anyways, our garden is a sort of trap. We're allowed to let them out on Shabbos.
Oh, so that's the Gemara to tomorrow. Is your garden
we feed them?
Trapped or not? It could be because do they know you? Do they come to you for food?
Yeah, they would recognize me.
Oh, so then it could be that they're trapped anyway because they come to you. We'll see that certain things. Okay, any questions? Any other questions? Sure. With everything. Have a very good night. I'm pressing end, and that way we'll start.